production of the Mississippi State University Extension Service.
Today on Farm Week, the federal government confirms that July was cooler than normal. In fact, the 7th coolest on record.
In southern gardening, when the heat of August and September dries your landscape out, it can be difficult to maintain a lot of color. Try instead to establish color pockets. In the markets, government projections for U.S. corn and soybean crops don't line up with pre-report expectations, as opinions about the feeder cattle market grow more positive for the long term.
In the feature segment, tractors are given on today's farms, but they weren't always as useful as they are now. Harold Brock is one of those responsible for the tractor as we know it. He designed 2 of America's iconic tractors for Ford and John Deere.
There's a big pent-up demand for fireman equipment after the war, and so that little tractor, the 8N red and gray tractor, we produced 100,000 a year, which was 25% of the total tractor market with one tractor.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leighton Spann.
And I'm Artis Ford. Welcome to Farm Week.
Mississippi agriculture breathed a sigh of relief following the weather in July.
Well, Leighton, after the rain delayed spring planting, Mississippi farmers needed cooler temperatures and moisture to help the crop catch up. Well, the National Weather Service says that happened. Overall, Mississippi had its 7th coolest July on record out of its last 119 years of record keeping. Rainfall was a little drier than average, but not too bad. It was the 48th driest July out of the last 119 years. Now, looking at the lower 48 states as a whole, July was the 30th warmest July on record. As for precipitation, July was the 5th wettest July on record in the United States.
A recent report credits the Extension Service and Experiment Station system in part for the continued growth of ag and bioscience industries in Mississippi and all across the South. The study by the Ohio-based Battelle Technology says that agriculture, forestry, and bioscience industries in the 13-state southern region generate $240 billion in economic activity, support more than 2 million jobs, and generate labor income of $62 billion. The report says land-grant university programs such as the Extension Service are successfully meeting the needs of this growing sector in many ways. In addition to communicating research-based information, Extension Service Director Gary Jackson says introducing new technology is another key area of support.
You know, there was an article in Progressive Farmer not too long ago about is Extension still relevant? And the people in this state will tell you that it is because of the support that we're trying to give. Many areas, not only agriculture, but community development, 4-H, family consumer sciences. But we're already planning for the next 10 to 20 years of the type of extension faculty and specialists that we need, the type of field agents that we need, and having a level of expertise. And certainly technology is at the forefront of that. Extension's future depends upon technology and our ability to very quickly get it to the people.
The Battelle study says the ag and bioscience industry's tremendous economic impact across the region is due in large part to the research and development work being accomplished by experiment stations in the land-grant system. MAFIS Director Dr. George Hopper says their research has always focused on the real needs of Mississippi agriculture.
We've had some really good successes over the years. A couple of things that come to mind was we developed a fertilizer system to put nitrogen in the ground for and show people how to do it with anhydrous ammonia technology. We helped develop cotton breeds that were right for this area, hallmark in our breeding program. It's really just outstanding work in weed science and animal husbandry. And today, a lot of that work continues in a different way.
The Battelle study of the relationship between work conducted by land-grant university-based programs and the industries they support was commissioned by the Southern Region Extension Service and experiment station directors.
Well, once the temperatures heat up in the summer, it's hard to keep the whole landscape filled with color. In this week's Southern Gardening segment, Extension horticulturist Dr. Gary Bachman will show us how color pockets can keep our gardens looking fresh.
In our hot and humid summers, sometimes it's difficult to have a whole landscape full of color. This is when it's good to have small pockets of color that are easy to maintain and keep your landscape looking good. Today we're back visiting our friend Iris and her beautiful and relaxing landscape. One of the best plants we can grow in our hot summer landscape is flowering vinca, of which Iris has made good use. In the front landscape, Cora and Mediterranean flowering vinca are paired with Margarita sweet potato vine for a colorful entrance to the driveway. Cora apricot is used around back in a small hot spot surrounded by brick and concrete by the pool. Purslane has continued to be of interest to me for color in our long hot summers with its fleshy succulent foliage. This pink purslane container brightens the pocket planting of chartreuse creeping jenny and bloody sorrel growing underneath this tropical sago palm. During the summer months, finding a shady area is a bonus. In this shady nook, Iris has combined the dark purple foliage of Sweetheart Purple Sweet Potato and the Caladium White Christmas. Another plant with dark foliage that can provide pockets of color is the 2006 All-America Selections winner, Black Pearl Pepper. This is a compact and upright plant with distinctive semi-glossy, dark purple to black leaves. The fruit provides interest with shiny round black-purple pearls that mature to bright red orbs of vibrant color. Don't let the heat and humidity keep you indoors this summer. You'll be surprised how much impact color pockets can have in your landscape. I'm horticulturist Gary Bachman for Southern Gardening.
Leighton Gary says if you don't have unlimited time, you just simply vary the size of your color pockets to fit your schedule. In the feature segment today, you can see them for sale on roadsides, or you can see them in antique tractor shows, but once they were the best you could buy. Meet the man who designed two of America's iconic tractors. Time now for the markets with Leighton Spann, and some controversy over a feed supplement, you say, that may provide support to fat cattle?
That's right. In fact, one packer in the U.S. is refusing now cattle that have been fed Zilmax. Also ahead in the markets this week, China makes a big buy of new crop U.S. soybeans. The August 12th crop report is seen as bullish for cotton, while long-term optimism grows for the feeder cattle market. We begin in grains and oilseeds, where there are some positives for the soybean market. Wednesday of this week, it was announced that China bought 110,000 tons of U.S. new crop soybeans. Meanwhile, the possibility of yield losses to beans due to some tropical weather possibly approaching the Central Gulf also is supporting bean prices. Shifting gears now somewhat and turning to corn, the August 12th USDA crop estimates for soybeans as well as corn were under the pre-report expectations. Now, corn has seen some 35-month lows just in the last 10 days alone. And even with a reduced production estimate and lower ending stocks, analysts note the USDA's current stocks-to-usage ratio remains bearish. Questions about future demand for corn and whether it is overestimated are troubling DTN senior market analyst Darren Newsom these days.
You know, the next issue is how much is demand still going to be cut? Are we overestimating demand right now, meaning that we aren't going to see it build back after losing ground these last 3 years due to tightening supplies? So that's the real threat, is that demand doesn't come back to the degree that everyone's talking about at this point. And if we don't have the demand that we think we're going to, and we have a larger crop, say 14 billion bushel plus, all of a sudden we've got an abundance of corn available, and that's going to really weigh on the market.
Meanwhile, the cotton market has seen some sharp price gains in the first half of this past week. The monthly USDA reports on the 12th were described as quite supportive as far as this market's outlook. Extension Ag economist John Michael Riley had some comments about cotton as I talked to him Thursday morning. So John Michael, how were those August 12th numbers supporting the cotton market?
Well, we did see a reduction in ending stocks. You filter all the way down through the report, that's the number everybody really looks for, down 100,000 bales compared to the previous month's report. So that was really the supportive aspect of the report, is the fact that there was a reduction in expected ending stocks for the 2013-2014 marketing year. Had everything to do with a reduction in total production yield. 813 pounds an acre is what's currently projected. This comes from the crop production report, which is the first of the year to really use some objective data, some field data from plots out across the United States. So it's one that you can sink your teeth into more than previous reports were strictly been survey and trend type of analysis to get to those yield numbers. So we did see a reduction in total production, also a slight reduction in expected exports for this current marketing year. So that was a bit of an offsetting number, but at the end of the day, a smaller ending stocks was supportive for the market.
What about crop conditions right now nationwide? Well, how is that looking? Is that part of the reason we've seen a little spike here?
Well, I'd say no, because we have seen conditions improve a little bit. 15% of the crop is rated poor or very poor compared to 21% a week ago. We have seen some rains falling in West Texas. Rains are falling here in Mississippi, probably more than folks would like. But the West Texas crop is one that everybody really looks at, and there has been some indications that it is improving. We've seen that with this week's crop condition report, and that is a little bit a bit of a pressure on the market.
Now there is some chatter, if you read a lot of the commentaries and analysis, that maybe all this run up in price is not really warranted, even despite that crop report. How would you respond to those?
Well, I think we've seen the economy improving and unemployment's dropping. The number of jobs being added to the economy is improving, and to me, that's one of that supports cotton price. Anytime that we can see an improvement in the general economy, that's very supportive. Cotton very responsive to very generic, or not generic, but very general economic news. Mm-hmm. So all of that information has been supportive of the price.
As we told you last week, August is National Catfish Month, and we have yet another trivia quiz related to aquaculture, and here it is for you. What is the per capita consumption of farm-raised catfish in the United States? Is it just over a half pound, over 2 pounds, 6.4 pounds, or 15 pounds? I'll tell you the answer at the end of the markets.
We're going to pause for a short break on Farm Week. Coming up, we'll look at the calendar, and Leighton Spann reports on Tyson Foods' controversial decision and the bullish feeder cattle market. In the feature segment today, meet the man who turned the tractor into the versatile tool we know today.
From our family to yours, Mississippi's farmers believe the best produce and livestock are grown right here at home. With ms.foodsearcher.com, you're only a click away. Using your smartphone, you'll be connected to hundreds of families and small businesses dedicated to providing you with fresh, local foods. Produce, meats, fish, dairy, agritourism, community markets, and more are right at your fingertips, no matter where you are. ms.foodsearcher.com.
Before we get back to the markets, let's look at the Farm Week calendar. Mississippi State University will host its annual Muscadine Field Day on Saturday, August 24th. Hours are 8:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. The location is the McNeil Experiment Station on Ben Gill Road in Carriere. Carriere is north of Picayune and south of Poplarville. You'll hear about the latest research and get to sample many muscadine varieties. You'll also see how to set up trellises and control diseases and pests. 2 Mississippi meetings of the Cattlemen's College take place in late August. Low-stress beef cattle handling will be demonstrated. Herd health and forage management will be covered. The president of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association will also be present. The first will be held August 28th at the Kane Cattle Company at Pickens and August 29th at JRW Farms at Seminary. There's no charge to attend. Call the Mississippi Cattlemen's Association to register for lunch. Go to our Farm Week website at farmweek.msucares.com for information on these and other events. Now check out this week's Farm Week Snapshot.
Earlier this month, Tyson Fresh Meats announced that after September 6th, they will no longer process cattle that have been given the feed additive Zilmax. Analyst Darren Newsom thinks this development could provide a short-term boost to the fat cattle market by reducing the supply of animals.
It's going to stretch it out a little bit, so the beef isn't going to be readily available on hand. I mean, they're going to hold them in the yard a little bit longer to get them up to weight, or they're going to be selling them at lighter weights, and so it's going to reduce, possibly reduce short-term beef supplies, and that's why we saw the October contract really react more so than many of the deferreds. Strong commercial buying coming in, some investment buying as well on this news, which is the scary side, because if once this story gets old and they start to work through some of the particulars, that same group that was buying could turn into sellers again.
Meanwhile, other meat packers such as National Beef Packing and JBS say they will not change their cattle buying practices despite Tyson's action over the feed supplement. The president of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, Scott George of Wyoming, says his group, quote, stands behind the science of the additives. And the maker of Zilmax, Merck Animal Health, said in a statement this week, the benefits and safety of Zilmax are well documented, and the product has a 30-plus year history of rigorous testing. Well, in the face of what's happening with corn prices right now, bullish optimism continues to grow for feeder cattle. Analyst Jamie Kohaki says the situation could be especially good in the long term for feeder prices.
We've had some decent rains down in northern Texas, last 30, 45 days. They've been replenished in a lot of that area. And corn market, obviously, being the big factor of tanking there. But I like the feeders. I would buy breaks here short term.
Before the feature story, let's check the trivia answer for this week. And the correct choice is A. The per capita consumption of farm-raised catfish in the entire United States is now about half a pound per year.
Well, many people remember their first car. Many also remember their first tractor. In today's feature segment, we have the man responsible for designing two of America's iconic tractors. Harold Brock led the teams that produced the Ford N Series and the John Deere 4020 series. Through his work with Henry Ford, Brock got to know some of this nation's greatest inventors, including Thomas Edison and George Washington Carver. Mark DeMarcus' Chris Gurley produced this story before Brock passed away at the age of 96 in 2011.
Mr. Ford had an insatiable desire to get rid of animals, and in 1939 there were still 19 million animals being used on farms, and he said, well, we need a utility tractor that will replace the horse, do more things than just cultivate. When he gave me the assignment, he said, well, if you can design and we can produce a tractor that won't sell for any more than a team of animals, the harness, and the 10 acres of land it takes to feed the animals, that would be good for the farmer because he could use then the 10 acres to raise food for himself or other people. So that was the challenge, and that price was $585.
Though Harold Brock never earned high school or college degrees, he is credited with designing what many consider two of the most important tractors in the history of agriculture, the Ford 9N series and the John Deere 4020. Brock began his career at Ford as a student at the Henry Ford Technical School in Dearborn, Michigan. There he learned about electrical engineering, pattern making, and chemistry, invaluable skills needed in the production of a car.
They said, what do you want to be? And I said, oh, I want to be an engineer. And I was fortunate because then they assigned me to Mr. Ford as my apprentice foreman at 15. I served at Mr. Ford's knee as an apprentice to him, plus his handful of skilled technicians.
Because he was Henry Ford's apprentice, Brock met some of the 20th century's most important inventors and visionary thinkers, including Thomas Edison and George Washington Carver.
Carver was having us eat soup and bread and that made out of soybeans, and also Carver was wanted Mr. Ford to be on a green fiber diet, and he'd go out and pick up plant life and bring in, we'd have grass sandwiches for lunch, and he said that there's no such thing as a weed, it's just a plant in the wrong place. And so Carver was an excellent person to work with.
In addition to mechanical and metallurgical research, Thought and study in the field of chemistry have for years been devoted to the development of new uses for farm products. Until today, the American farmer helps to build motor cars, just as the motor car manufacturer helps to make farming more efficient and convenient. They help each other, and that helps the country. One of the most interesting of these harvests, because it shows the trend, is soybeans. For every million cars produced, 600,000 bushels are used annually for the manufacture of enamels and for plastics, electrical parts, and similar parts.
Known best as the inventor of the modern assembly line, Henry Ford was also a pioneer in the development of soybeans and soy foods. The suit he's wearing in this picture, taken in 1941, is a blend of 25% soybean fibers and 75% wool. It was Ford's intention that he would someday grow rather than mine an automobile. So when Ford put Brock in charge of tractor engineering at the age of 25, one of his tasks was to replace the tractor's metal seat with something more organic.
Because the little steel seat on the little Ford tractor was, that thing was designed maybe 150 years ago, and it cost 38 cents to produce, and Mr. Ford said to me, well, why don't you make it out of soybeans? It'll be more comfortable in the winter and summer for heat and cold. And of course, you never said you wouldn't do it, so I did it. And he asked me, well, how much does it cost? And I'd have to say $2.50. And he said, well, we'll keep working on to try to get the cost down. Well, then I had to tell him that the rodents were eating the seat right out from underneath the farmers because they like soybeans. So that killed that.
Other endeavors, however, were successful. In 1938, as head of tractor engineering, Brock was put in charge of the development of the Ford 9N tractor. The tractor was a collaboration between Henry Ford and Harry Ferguson. It was a deal sealed with a handshake, with Brock caught in the middle.
Of course, then I had to tell them that I was following their advice because they never got together as a group. So I had a little problem with, pleasing them all that I was following their advice.
The tractor incorporated the Ferguson hitch, an innovation designed to prevent the tractor from flipping over and killing the operator if the plow got hung up on a rock. Brock managed to have the tractor in production in just 6 months. When the U.S. entered World War II, instead of designing tractors, Brock found himself designing Sherman tanks and Ford Jeeps. However, once the fighting ended, Brock began working on the iconic Ford 8N, an all-purpose tractor that would be widely used on farms and construction sites. Between 1947 and 1952, Ford sold over 500,000 8Ns.
There's a big pent-up demand for fireman equipment after the war, and so that little tractor, the 8N red and gray tractor, we produced 100,000 a year, which was 25% of the total tractor market with one tractor.
Brock left Ford to work for John Deere in 1959. A disagreement over a poorly designed transmission that was failing stress tests was the cause of his departure.
And I was holding it up, wouldn't approve it. And finally, they came to me and said, we want to put it in production. And I said, well, you better get yourself a new chief engineer. And they did. They fired me and all my test people. So when I went to Deere, and new generation tractors, they said, well, Ford's going to come out with a power shift transmission. We won't have one on our tractor. And I said, well, don't worry about it. It won't work. And so I said, we'll design a power shift transmission that really works.
Brock became Deere's first worldwide director of engineering. And while he was in charge, Deere overtook International Harvester as the industry leader. While working for Deere, he helped found the Hawkeye Institute of Technical Learning, borrowing $500 to help start the college in Waterloo, Iowa. In 2008, a new student center was built and named in his honor. And in 2010, the man who never earned a degree received an honorary Doctor of Science degree from Iowa State University for his contributions both to agriculture and education.
I think you need education. You know, I'm all for education, not to, because you would never have the opportunities that I had.
Harold Brock passed away in early January of 2011 at the age of 96. While the man is gone, his contributions to agriculture will be with us for quite some time.
I'm just happy to give credit to all of my people in both the ag and automotive group that helped me accomplish what I accomplished. So it didn't come by me only.
And go to our Farm Week website, Facebook page, or YouTube page if you want to watch that again. We are at the end of Farm Week for this week. On our next show, we'll have a full lineup for you.
We'll be revisiting the Dixie National Sale of Junior Champions in Jackson, Mississippi. It's the pinnacle of the junior livestock show circuit in the state.
Mississippi State University's Bug Camp is more fun than a bucket of creepy crawlies.
And in Southern Gardening, Jerry's Jungle. See how one man turned a landscape eyesore into a tropical outpost.
And before we go today, we're going to say goodbye to Jessica Munch, former student worker, now graduate of Mississippi State, going to work in Memphis at Channel 24. We look forward to hearing great things from her in the future. Well, that's it for this week. For the rest of the Farm Week crew, I'm Artis Ford.
And I'm Leighton Spann. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week.